Nancy, for having us. It's definitely a pleasure. And we're excited to be here today. So, again, my name is Jolanda Gardner, everyone, and I am a wife of an awesome, passionate husband, Bishop Gardner, also the mother to three beautiful, exciting little children who's probably going to be watching this later. And also, I feel like I get to work at one of the most amazing places. Yes, Turks and Caicos financial unit, financial
Commercial services.
Financial Services Commission. Oh my God! So y'all know who watching me and know me, note it down. Okay, Sister J, cool it. The TCI FSC. It is a pleasure, and I'm excited to be there. I always wondered. The dream job, everybody wants a dream job. And, I always thought about a dream job, and I can't believe that I've actually found, something that I love, I'm passionate about doing. And at the TCI FSC, I am in the anti-money laundering supervision department, where I've been recently promoted as an AML analyst 3. And within that role, I work within a very new unit, which is the outreach unit. And I get an opportunity to do things like this, go out into the community and share exactly about what we do. We regulate, we supervise, and we monitor, license, and register our registrants and licensees within the financial sector. And so today we'll be talking a little bit more about what we do. Stay tuned.
I am Miss Maxalende Pear, and I too am very happy to have the opportunity to be on this show today. So in my role within the Financial Services Commission, I am an analyst 2 within the anti-money laundering supervision department. And in this role, just to be brief, we work directly or very closely with the various sectors just to help ensure that they remain compliant and that they have a full understanding of their compliance obligations. And me and Jolanda, we are new, so we are the members of the outreach unit, which is a new unit, as she would have said. And in this role, we get to do this on a closer basis.
Well, first of all, congratulations on the formation of this new unit. I think it's a really great initiative from the department. Being in real estate and having to comply based on regulations. And we're always hearing about the AML and all of these regulations. I think it's really a good thing to be able to go out there into the community and bring the services to the community and to be able to update them on exactly what is going on. And also, you said something about you're so passionate about your job. That's really a good thing.
Yeah.
I know when I started out, yes, I'm a little bit older than I look. But on a serious note, when I started out too, I always thought about, what it is that I really wanted to do as not just a job or career. And when I began real estate, I realized that I did have the passion for it. And that's why for me, even if there's someone in the food store or, wherever I'm at and they stop and say, Mr. Nancy, can you please answer real estate questions? I'm always just elated to do so because it's not just a 9 to 5 job and I don't want to deal with anyone when I leave out of my office, but I really have the job to my heart. And so passion is really important in the job that you do because it allows you to do it in its fullness and to your best potential. Again, thank you so much for coming on the program. And I'm looking forward to this conversation that we're going to have today. Right?
Absolutely.
So again, real estate, I also felt like this would have been a very fitting conversation for us with the new regulations in regards to the real estate ordinance. We have been getting more of an influx of agents who are coming in. And with that, I always want to be able to put information out there that will benefit us all as real estate agents to make sure our jobs are done in a more professional way and be able to service our clientele in the best light possible. And one of the things we are always faced with is, having our due diligence done on our clients. And so because of that, I feel like this will be a very informative show, not just for us as agents as well, but also for clients out there to understand what are the requirements that they have to live up to when they are looking to make a purchase in terms of real estate in the Turks and Caicos Islands. And again, for other businesses that may have to to comply with these same regulations. And on that same note, I would like to start by asking you, other than real estate, what are some of the other businesses that would have to, do customer due diligence? And also, could you explain a little bit about what due diligence is all about with a client?
Yeah, so I can be happy to share a little bit about that. So we'll start a little bit about what customer due diligence is. It's very important. If you're going to understand the importance of it, and if as a business you're going to apply it, you have to know
What it
what
is.
it is.
Exactly.
So what is customer due diligence? In short form, it's known as CDD. And CDD is pretty much the collection of your client's information, collection of data and facts of your clients. And the collection of this data, it really helps you as the business owner or the one who's doing the transaction to help you to understand who and verify, most importantly, it helps you to verify who your customer is, where's your customer coming from, where the customer resides. It helps you to understand a little bit more of who you're getting involved in and what type of business relationship you're getting involved with, and most of all, like I keep saying, who you're getting involved with.
Correct.
And so now that we're getting an understanding and a gist of what customer due diligence is, you can get a sense of appreciation of why it is so important to be able to make sure that you're collecting this information in the scope of real estate business or any business, but especially real estate. You're collecting high value for goods that you're selling, and so you're in the business in the Turks and Caicos receiving funds, dispersing funds, and so you're in a gateway where people who want to launder money. You're in a gateway for where people who want to do terrorist financing, and they're looking for ways to hide dirty money or money that was received illegally into something that is good. And so businesses such as real estate, most of our non-designated non-financial businesses, such as real estate companies, accountants, you have the high-value dealers, pawn shops. You also have law firms. These are the specific ones that are called the DNFBP, Designated Non-Financial Businesses. Also, who are under the Due Diligence Act, you have NPOs, who are also, then you have money service providers, and then you also have company managers. These are all sectors that will fall under the sectors who are responsible to make sure that they have customer due diligence intact. So we're talking about understanding the importance and why is it so critical. So these businesses now are the gateways and where people who want to do illicit money transactions, they can come in. And so if you are not collecting customer data, if you are not collecting anything on people who, and if you don't even know who you are interacting with, that can be a very high risk for you, your life, and the country, and the financial sector. And so that's why it's very important. Also, having the customer due diligence as a part of your program, it's one of the AML pillars of the framework that forms a great AML process. And so you have AML, which is anti-money laundering, and then you also have the prevention of terrorist financing. And in order to guard against that, you have to have pillars and protection around you. And so collecting customer data, understanding who your customer is, helps us to protect against that. Along with the customer due diligence pillars, you also have your business risk assessment, assessing the risk of your business and what you do, assessing your customer risk. All of these things are pillars. Then you also have your manuals, your monitoring manuals, and you also have your business plan. All of these are pillars that you put in place to guard against and protect against terrorist financing and anti-money laundering. And this is why it is so critical, grabbing that information. The last thing I'll say on this, having that customer due diligence information, it helps you also to guard against fraud, identity theft, and also you have information so that you can be able to help any possible investigations that may be going on through the FIA or the commission. It's very important, folks, to protect your business, protect what you do every day, and to protect the financial stability of the Turks and Caicos Islands through this small act of due diligence.
What you said is so important, knowing who you are working with and dealing with. You know, in real estate, we normally say you want to know your customers so you are able to service them better. But you
Exactly.
also want to know your customers so you are able to protect your business as well
Exactly.
and protect yourself. So that's very important. You also use the acronym NPO.
Yes.
Please explain what that means, because even though I may understand that, we need to ensure that everyone understands what's an NPO and what this, as well as this does with collecting data for your customer.
Yes, of course. Everyone loves MPOs because just simply what it is, it's a non-profit organization.
Yes.
It's an organization, a group of people who come together to do charity and good work for goodwill within the community, raising funds and dispersing funds to the general public for religious purposes, social purposes, welfare purposes, sporting purposes, community purposes. That's what the MPO does, and so that's why it's very important when you're going to be soliciting funds or if you're going to be receiving donations. It's very good to understand who you're collecting that money from and who you're accepting that money from and who we are building ties with. Who are you allowing to pour in to, or where are you allowing them to pour in from? It's very good to understand that.
Okay. That, yeah, it is very good, because I think sometimes some businesses may feel like, hey, they are picking on me and asking me to do these things, but based on what you are saying, this is not just one business, but many of those businesses, like you say, that are the gateway that would allow or be there to stop or prevent, these type of activities, terrorist activities or anything from happening. And we in the Turks and Caicos Islands, this is a country that is, I think, noticeable worldwide, and especially because we have tax havens and people, there's an influx of investors and people that come into the country. So we have to be vigilant and have to be on our guards and make sure, do our customer due diligence to ensure that we are dealing with the right people, and like you said, again, protecting our country as well. So in talking about collecting this data and this information, right? This says to me that I should ask: does the FSC has the rights to, attend and go to a business and inspect records, or just to ensure that they are complying? That's where I'm trying to retain. How do they ensure that they are complying with what's going on?
So I'm glad that you asked that, because yes, the FSC actually does have the legal authority to carry out inspections, or on-site examinations, as we would call them. And we cite this power through the AML, the anti-money laundering, or
Yes.
the prevention of terrorist financing regulations, or the proceeds of crime ordinance. I believe it is section 164. And what this allows us to do is to just be able to carry out our on-site and our off-site examinations, and to ensure that businesses are maintaining or even meeting their compliance obligations. And when it comes to deciding who is subject to these inspections, we do this on what is called the risk-based approach.
Okay.
When I say this, I mean that we would look at the type of services that they offer, or we look at whether or not they have operations in a higher risk jurisdiction. We also look at things like the level of the transactions that are being done, or if they have a past history of noncompliance. Because if there is that history of noncompliance, then the chance is heightened that we would probably come in for a follow-up sooner rather than later. So essentially, each entity is assessed based on the risk level, and what this allows us to do is to just be able to target our efforts and to target our resources where there actually may be a potential for money laundering or for terrorist financing. Yeah.
I also wanted to add in there as well, we have the supervisory authority to go to our licensees and our registrants. We also, through the governors, we have the supervisory authority to go to all businesses or any business that is not regulated or supervised by us. Once you are a registered business within the Turks and Caicos Islands, and should the commission find it necessary or have a reason for a visit or to request for information, that authority as well has been granted to us as the Turks and Caicos Financial Services Commission.
It's a lot of things you got to do.
Yes.
So, in all things, I feel like there may be challenges, and I'm just thinking on the side of the businesses, in terms of they may be compliant, but I'm sure that there are some businesses that may find difficulty in obtaining the information. How would you say that the Financial Services Commission can assist these businesses with what challenges they are facing?
Yeah, so we'll start off with the challenges that we have been noticing based on our most recent experiences and inherent experiences within compliance here in the Turks and Caicos. We realize that there is a somewhat of a compliance gap where that is concerned, and we've noticed that it's due to the culture of the industries, various practices and behaviors of the industry. For example, the real estate industry. You're a realtor, so you know the culture, the way in which and the behavior and the practices that are, globally for real estate agents. And so sometimes, and even the way that the culture is built within that particular business.
Right.
And so you have your way and your values and your behaviors, and sometimes, not all the time, that it aligns with regulation and with law and with guidances. And so when that happens, sometimes it causes a compliance gap.
Right.
And so along with that, we also find inconsistencies when it comes to collecting customer due diligence. Inconsistencies can occur due to familiarity, and we'll talk a little bit about that later. It's just all the time, it's just not consistent. If I know you very well, if I've been working for you for 30 years, we've been finding there's a possibility that we may skip a step. And so this is what we're talking about. We're finding inconsistencies in these areas. But the way that we mitigate or we support our licensees and registrants in this is through guidance. We have numerous guidances that can be found on our website. That from time to time you can go ahead and look at that. So we have guidances. Also, when these guidances are issued, we tend to have training sessions and special sessions. I don't know if you could remember. I believe you were there when the legislation had changed within the real estate.
Yes.
The recent one, we came in and we had a discussion and we shared. So that's an example of some of the things that we do to help to support in these changes or in these gaps. Also, what we do, we're changing the temperature or the communication style here at the TCI FSC with introducing a more relational relationship with having relationship analysts and having that connection, one-on-one connection with the sectors. And needless to say, that is a reason why this outreach unit was created, so that we can be able to have a closer knit relationship with the sectors as well. So that these are ways that we try to support. And of course, there are the trainings, there are the sector meetings as well that we put on, so that we can be able to connect with the registrants and licensees.
A question that comes to mind: do you have, let's say, for smaller businesses that may not be able to, they just don't have the capability to, for the compliance? Say, for example, I have my own real estate business. I'm a seasoned realtor, but it may be someone who's not a seasoned realtor, right? And they're on their own and they don't know where to start. They may not have 2 or 3 persons who are in there who can be the compliance officer or any of these things. Do you have any suggestions or recommendations, like for an outside person who can assist them in making sure that they are compliant, that does compliance for, as a livelihood, or is more, who actually knows about compliance, that can assist smaller businesses who's not sure how to go about navigating? Other than the assistance you're providing, do you know, or you have resources that you can refer these individuals to?
Okay, certainly. This is a very, very good area topic. And the Turks and Caicos is really, really big on helping entrepreneurs and helping, the common man, and helping those who are up, down, to come up and to build. So this is very good information to know. One of the quotes that came to me when you said that is, "To whom much is given, much is required.
Yeah.
And if we can get the business sector to understand this, to whom much is given, you have an idea to start a business, you have an idea to start a nonprofit organization to raise funds for the benefit of the public, you have now a responsibility now. It's not just, a fun venture to tick off of your bucket list and just to brag and say that you have it. It comes with a responsibility. So I want to advise the public, you can't have the benefit or accomplish the goal without the responsibility. And so that responsibility comes with understanding your laws and regulations. It comes with gaining training and knowledge and getting that understanding for yourself. We do have on the website our company service managers, our licensed company service managers, where smaller businesses can get legal advice and get advice from company formation companies. The information, the resources are out there, but you first have to receive that responsibility and know that it's up to you to be able to gain that.
Okay. So now, what are the consequences of any business that is not adhering to the client's due diligence process?
Well, if a business fails to carry out the proper due diligence, we know that there are consequences, and some of these consequences are actually quite serious. But from the FSC's side of things, you have consequences such as formal enforcement actions.
Okay.
And this could be in the form of directives or warning letters or even financial penalties. If things get a bit more serious, you can be facing license restrictions or suspensions or even the revocation of a license. And also, there is the potential for that increased scrutiny around the business, which would essentially lead to just more inspections going forward as well.
Okay. I think that's a good approach, like you say, the warning letters, because sometimes, even in everything we do, we know what our responsibility is. But sometimes when we say life happens, we are juggling so many things, and we are not able to keep up with everything we're required to do. So at least, like you say, if you are providing warning letters, that gives the business an opportunity to be able to turn around and comply at a later date to make sure that their business is up to standard.
Yeah, I do want to add also, aside from the enforcement actions and aside from the fines, if a business chooses to not carry out the proper CDD, of course they've opened up themselves now to more risks, risks such as the operational risk, and even the reputational risk is now on the table. And of course, if a business is found to be linked to any form of money laundering or terrorist financing, and I must say even unknowingly, this is obviously a massive problem. And these kind of fallouts, it's very hard to come back from that. So in the moment, we might feel like, we're cutting corners with not doing the CDD and we're saving time. But in the long run, it could cost us everything, actually. Yeah.
So how is it that you, as the FSC, how do you stay up to date with the international standards that are required in terms of customer due diligence standards in the Turks and Caicos?
So the way that we remain relevant with the global standards is we ensure that our laws, our guidances, our ordinances, they're all in alignment with our global standard setters, which is the Financial Action Task Force.
Okay.
It's a global standard setting body that sets out financial regulations, and they issue recommendations that are to be set globally. And so the Turks and Caicos Islands are members of that regional body, and that regional body, they supervise us and they monitor our regulatory and our compliance performance, and they ensure that we are following those global standards. And so that's why it's important, and that's why units like the AML department, we host annual returns. That's why we come with questionnaires and surveys, and that's why we give the warning letters, and we really, really employ the the public and these sectors to comply, because it's like a domino chain.
Right.
By you complying as a business owner and by you complying as a realtor, it keeps the Turks and Caicos Islands relevant and to be able to comply with the global standards.
Do you feel like all of these recommendations that are passed on to the FSC unit are relevant to the Turks and Caicos Islands?
Of course, everything, well, how we manage the recommendations, first of all, it's on a risk-based approach, but we would take what we receive for us. That's applied to our unit and to our registrants and licensees. But of course, that's why it's important for us to understand our sector. And it's important for us to understand the risk that our sectors pose and then be able to receive from those recommendations and apply it to our law.
Okay. I just gotta ask, No, the reason I ask that is because, I think that every country is a little bit different.
Yes,
And
it
even
is.
though we are getting directives from an international board, we want to still make sure that it's relevant and that the businesses are not just providing information because it's asked, but it has to be relevant information that is
Exactly.
really going to be meaningful to the end results.
And let me put this out there. When you don't answer the questions and when you don't return the emails and don't send the returns back completed, it puts us in a deficit. We are not able to risk assess. We are not able to understand the sectors. We are not able to understand which recommendation flows with us because, we lack information. And so we're getting there, we're getting there with communication forums such as this and us being able to reach out. It's just really basically getting the sector to really understand and flow. Because once you understand, you'll be able to flow with what we're doing.
So basically, what are some of the key information that a business, and let's start it, especially with real estate. What are some of the key information that just a real estate agent or a real estate company should be gathering from their clients? But we can talk about clients' due diligence and whatever. We need to know specifically what are some of these key things that are relevant to collect from our customers.
Well, I'll tell you this. First of all, we have to understand where the foundation of what we're asking for, where is that coming from?
Right.
And it's coming, how do you know what to collect? Because I can say a passport, address verification, I can say source of funds, I can say a bank statement, all that. But you first have to, each business or sector has to go back to the AML, the AML PTF, that is the Anti-Money Laundering and the Prevention of Terrorist Financing Regulations. That is where each business or each sector, especially the real estate, because we're talking specifically real estate, need to go back there because in those regulations, they have set out specific policies, procedures, and certain guidances that should be asked for according to your sector. So that's very important for the real estate agents and for the real estate companies to go back to that actual regulation to get that outline that is specific to their sector. It's very important to be able to do that because you can't go and do what the accountants are doing or just go and collect. Oh, I see them collecting. Oh, I heard they are collecting. No, it has to be according to the policies and procedures that are found in these regulations.
All right, we're going to pause for a quick second just to remind those who are listening that if you do have a question or a comment, feel free to put it in the comment section. That's why I keep glaring at my phone. I just want to make sure that if you are fully engaged in what we are talking about today and you have an opportunity to ask any of those questions that you may have. I see persons online, but I see no questions, but I just want to remind you that you are able to do so.
I did wanted to add on there because this is a very important aspect of talking about what should you ask for, and maybe it can be a learning moment as well. What you ask for in terms of customer due diligence, 100% of the time is based on your transaction and the level of the transaction of what you're doing.
Right.
So you have different levels of customer due diligence. You have the simplified due diligence. You have the regular, you have the regular due diligence, and then you have the enhanced due diligence. But I know you say, well, what do I do? But it's based on the transaction and the level of risk that transaction would pose to be able to know which level of due diligence you would need to apply.
So just for an example, what is the simplest form of due diligence that any one business can do?
Of course, your identification. You need to be able to verify a real life identification of the individual. That's the very first thing. Address verification, verifying the address of where that person is from. That is the most simple, basic level and form of due diligence.
Some persons may provide you with an address that may be for their homes, while some persons may provide you with an address for a business they are a part of. Which is the most appropriate form of address that should be linked to that individual?
Residential address is what is being looked for in terms when you look at the customer due diligence. Again, let's go back to what customer due diligence is. It's facts about the client, not facts about the business of the client, but
Right.
it's facts about the client themselves. And once businesses and those who are entering transactions can understand that, because and again, you'll have to understand what a company is. A company or a company is a legal entity, but you're looking for that natural person, that information pertaining to the natural person that you're working with. And so that's why it's important to get that address verification.
Okay. And may I go now to the extreme? We had it simplest form. We're not going in the middle. What are some of the extremes? And I know it's all based on the business that you're in, and on how you classify that person, whether they're high risk or whatever. But what are some of the extreme forms or ways that you need to, like due diligence, you need to get on any one individual?
Okay. Well, upon a threshold, you will have what we call enhanced due diligence, and that's what will be the third step up from the due diligence ranking. And so enhanced due diligence would be, again, it will be on the discretion of the transaction, and more than likely, most times, it's hinging on the transaction, what is needed
Right.
to further investigate or assess or verify that individual for that transaction.
Okay.
So it's not limited to or only,
Right.
but these are just some items that would come up. You can have your source of funds, source of wealth. You can also have further screening as well that can be added. Some people also ask for second form if they have like maybe 2 passports from various different countries. So additional identification will probably be asked as well in that form.
If you consider someone high risk based on after doing this due diligence, right? Does this say you cannot do business with this individual, or what would you recommend that someone do at this point with this customer?
With high-risk customers, you want to be careful not to discriminate or anything like that, but increase monitoring. You would just, again, based on the variables that you have found, you would just find increased monitoring. You would start there with high-risk individuals.
Right. I asked that question because we are always asked about this in real estate. We have to always classify them high, medium, or low risk, right? And sometimes you can have someone who is a high risk because they're just related to a political figure or anything like that. But it doesn't mean that that person is not a good individual and is not doing business legitimately. And that's why I asked that question, because some people just affiliate that, like, I don't want to touch this. But then remember, my brother may be a politician, but that doesn't mean me and my brother sees eye to eye and we have any connection, and that shouldn't stop you from doing business with him. I think, like you said, we have to look at every situation on its own merit and be able to make a decision from that to see where we should move forward with or where we should not move forward with. You wanted to say something?
I would also like to add to that it also goes back to the risk appetite of the organization. The entity has to know the level of risk that they're willing to take on. So if it is a case that in their policies they feel as though they should not be having any business relationships with politicians, then that's what they should go by. Although that is a bit extreme.
Yeah. So in our business, again, keep back to real estate. We have, every business is different, and you have a policy where you have to do customer due diligence every time you're dealing with someone from a buyer or seller perspective. What would you say, and we have lots of repeat customers, how often do you think we need to do more of client verification on that individual?
Well, first of all, the span to host or hold documents is 5 years as legislative. Also, even though it's 5 years, again, it's based on the monitoring and the record keeping policies that the business has. It's very, and this is why it's so important to have guidance and policies and procedures as a business.
Right.
Because you, as the business owner or the one who's managing the business, you have to determine that. You have to determine your monitoring scope. You have to determine the frequency of your checks based on your clients. Again, like we talked about, if you have a lot of high-risk clients, that means you cannot wait 5 years.
Right.
It has to be more consistent or more frequent. Or if you have low-risk clients, maybe you can wait the 5 years. So again, all I'm alluding to is you need to be able to run a risk assessment, and you need to be able to run an assessment of your client base to understand. You have to be able to understand who you're going to check frequently and who you don't need to check frequently. But the legislative notice stipulated that you can hold records for 5 years. Of course, if you have a passport, it said 5 years. Of course, you need to check to make sure before 5 years if it is up.
Right.
So you have to use your discretion. And the most importantly, the takeaway from this question is establish your guidances and your internal policies.
Yeah, I think that's a good thing. And like what you said about the passports, is a very prime example. Even if you have 5 years, someone's passport may probably expire within 2 years, and you want to ensure that you have an up-to-date information within that 2 year span. If that customer comes back to you, you're responsible. Like, yes, we have information on you, but your passport has expired, and therefore we need to be able to update our information.
An example: suppose you have that passport of that individual. You know that individual personally. You know them because they've been with you for 15 years, and you've been with their mother, and you've been with their father, and you've sold properties through the generations, and you have this person's passport, and so you set for 5 years, and something happens to that person's passport or identity theft unbeknown to you, and you have that there, and you go ahead and you do your usual transaction that you would do for them, for their family villa every year, and you go and you use it.
Yeah.
Without doing the proper due diligence, without checking them, and you didn't check them because that's your friend, you know them for 30 years, and so these are some of the issues we talked about, some of the challenges. These are some of the vulnerabilities that we face, and that's why we wanted to bring it to your attention, the importance of periodical checks, even if you have to put that in place.
Yeah, and just to piggyback off of what Ms. Gardner is saying, the periodic checks are crucial, and there are certain things that we believe should trigger these checks. Even, for example, if there's a change in ownership or a change in control, or even if there's just maybe a transaction that is just out of the ordinary, or just something that seems to be like different behavior, this should trigger a check.
What about when we collect these documents, right? For example, we're dealing with a customer, we met them in person if they are traveling, because we deal with a lot of international buyers. I know we have local buyers on islands, which is more easier to collect information from, but international persons, taking the passport, stamping it to say we saw them in person, does that also help and qualify compared to having them to go and have it notarized somewhere else? Would that be sufficient, like for the Financial Services Commission? If you've seen the passport and you just stamp it instead of saying, hey, go and get this notarized.
If you've seen the passport and you have, pardon?
You've seen the passport for the individual to have on your file. Because most times in compliance, we ask them to have it notarized. But if we have our own in-house stamp, just to say, I have seen this passport and I've stamped it, would that be sufficient for financial services? Just want to be clear on that.
It should be. It should be sufficient. Is this an in-person transaction? Yes. Oh, yes, that would be sufficient. Yes, it is.
Okay. The other question I have is, of course, real estate. For most of it, we handle just a portion of the sales, and then it moves on to the attorneys to do, where they will also do their further due diligence, right? Would you say that, and sometimes we have the reverse, where attorneys may send us a customer that their customer to do a real estate transaction with them. Do you feel that is necessary? Not do you feel that. You should tell me if it is necessary, because your feelings is not, it's not about your feelings, it's what the law says.
That's what it is.
It's what it is. Do each individual party have to do their own due diligence, or can we depend on that third party's due diligence, seeing that they are in a professional standard, like an attorney or the bank or an accountant or someone who we know would have done their due diligence in advance?
Yes, so that's what we call third-party due diligence, and certainly third-party due diligence is accepted. They're also known as intermediaries and or introducers. So these third-party situations you can do that, but before you would enter into an introducer's relationship or an intermediary relationship, you are to also apply customer due diligence measures before you embark into that relationship. And I got it down just so I don't forget. You should ensure that there is adequate assurance in writing to that third party due diligence, so to that intermediary or to that introducer. You must also make sure that there's some type of declaration signed.
Okay.
A written declaration signed on behalf of that introducer. You should also make sure that that introducer understands the requirement to keep the record on which that they are doing the due diligence on, and not only keep the record but keep the evidence of the record, just like how you talked about having that notarized document on hand. So you want to make sure that the introducer has that record with them, that they're having that with them on hand. You also want to make sure that they understand that they should produce these documents without delay to you yourself, the business, or to the commission if needed or asked for. And this is a very questionable area as well. But before you enter into this third party agreement, you want to make sure that they understand that they need to be able to produce those documents that they've done on your behalf without delay. Also, it's very important for the businesses to understand that the business and its senior managers ultimately hold the responsibility. You're responsible for that due diligence that was done by the third party.
Right.
It cannot be, oh, the third party did it, so I don't know. But you have to, the bear and the responsibility is on the business to be able to have. So these are some of the things that if you're going to embark on an intermediary or an introducer transaction, these are some of the things that you need to take into consideration.
Yeah. Well, I think that's really good advice. And the reason I'm asking, we've all experienced this.
Yeah.
I've had an experience where there was a third party who introduced a customer, and they were compliant in providing the information. At the same time, we did our just the basic checks, but we got the majority of the information from the third party. And there also was an incident where the third party didn't feel compelled to share their information with us. And the difficult part about it, say for example, I'm being true, it's an attorney, just say an attorney. They already, I know, have client privileges, but they introduce you, say, my client would like to make a purchase of this or whatever. So for us, we're not dealing with the client directly, but we are more so dealing with the attorney. In providing our due diligence to the attorney is saying, well, it's not me you're dealing with, so they refuse to do our due diligence. But and so our response is, well, then provide me with the due diligence of the customer so that we can in turn have it for our files. And in the end, we ended up not doing the transaction because we didn't feel comfortable that no due diligence was passed between an individual. And so that's where the question is coming from, just trying to understand what information can be passed back and forth between third parties to ensure that we are complying and doing our due diligence with our customers.
And that's why those 2 points at the beginning, that assurance in writing and the declaration, is very important before you embark on such a relationship. Also, it's good to do a risk assessment as well, understanding the risk, because anytime you enter into a relationship with somebody, it's good to understand the history and the risk of who you're about to enter in with. And so even if there was some type of risk assessment that was made, then you would have understood, if there would have been an opportunity to understand the policies and the procedures of that intermediary, and then maybe the decision would have not been made to go forward with them.
Right.
And maybe you would have gone with somebody else. But if you don't get that pre-knowledge through assessment, then you would not know.
Yes.
I think a rule of thumb, or just something that I like to go by, is that you can always outsource or delegate the processes around compliance, but that responsibility for compliance, it always remains, in-house.
Yes.
And this approach, I think it encourages businesses to have accountability around who they are engaging in these business relationships with.
I know that we were going to talk about it. I just want to stick it in here when we talk about blind reliance.
Oh, yes.
As well. We call it like blind reliance, like saying, just like how you were in that transaction and saying, oh, I will rely on, or we will rely on that third party, but you have to make sure that the third party is aware. So pretty much that's just going back to the point of establishing the relationship and it not being informal. Or that's the bank's clients, they're going to give it to us. Don't ever go into an agreement on understanding on an assumption. You always have to do your risk assessment of understanding, assessing the relationship that you're going to embark on, and make sure getting that declaration and that signature in writing.
Well, that puts me to the question I was going to ask next about what are some of the mistakes persons do in terms of getting client due diligence. And I think that's a very important point with that blind reliance that you were talking about. Would you be able to tell us about any other mistakes that you feel like people do when trying to get due diligence from their customers?
So I think we would have probably touched on these points a little bit during our time here. And one of them, as we said, is the blind reliance. But also there is sometimes where persons become too comfortable with their clients. Yes, I understand you probably watch their children come from preschool to graduating college, but the risk might have changed over the years. You understand? So it is important not to get too comfortable with when dealing with these clients. Yeah.
You know the saying that says every friend has a friend, and their friends have friends.
Yes.
And we don't know what country their friends are from, so it's just good to know.
Yes. No, but that is correct. I know in our office with our due diligence process, one of the things we try to get ahead of is sending our due diligence forms before we even do anything. Because we find that sometimes when you say, for example, someone will make an offer, and the minute you send that offer and get it accepted, it's more difficult getting the due diligence back from that client. You're literally running them down every day trying to get it. And so you got to be proactive, and you got to be able to find a strategy to be able to get the information that is needed to do a proper due diligence on all of your clients.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, with that said, I think we've really come to the end of our program, but I would like to give you an opportunity if there's something that we did not discuss that you feel like is relevant that the listening audience needs to know about, or something that we have discussed that you feel like is worth reiterating. This is your opportunity to do so.
I would probably just touch on the red flags. So there are quite a few, and I guess I can use this opportunity to give you a little nugget to help, so that you don't find yourselves in these positions when we do come to do our inspections. So you want to ensure that you are keeping proper records. You want to ensure that each transaction that you're engaging in, you're certain that it makes sense. You don't have someone who's saying they want to purchase a high value property, but when they come to you with their source of funds, it's just not adding up there. You understand? And I do also want to say that around red flags, just try not to ignore them. Try to remain alert and really understand where the monies are coming from for these transactions. Because if you choose to ignore a red flag, then I think ultimately you make yourself become a red flag in our eyes. And I don't think anybody wants to end up in that position.
For sure not.
For me, and I think both of us, based on what we do, we want to be able to share with the sectors that, yes, we represent the regulator and we are here to supervise and monitor and everything, license and everything, but there is a duty to care. It's beyond, I talked about it earlier, it's beyond owning a business and, being successful, but there is a duty to care. And where I'm going with that is ensure that your internal policies and your internal guidances and training is active and it's alive and that it's relevant within your everyday operation. Ensure that they are aligning with the legislation, make sure that they are aligning with the ordinances and the guidances that are provided out there on the TCI website, the TCI, yes, the Financial Services website. Ensure that you are relevant and you're not just going through the motion, but also we want to make sure that training is exposed to everyone that is a part of the business. We don't just want training for the MLROs or the compliance officers or the directors of the business. We want to make sure that everyone who is a part of the business has some type of exposure to what it means to be compliant.
I think I'll just add one more thing around Ms. Gardner's point about duty of care. She said it quite well, but I just want to emphasize that there should be a need, there should be a desire to want to protect your businesses, to want to protect the financial space. Yes, it is about being compliant, but we want to ensure that we protect this financial space that we are operating in as well.
I think that's a very good point. But while you were talking, I know we're wrapping up, I had just one more thought, and I feel like I would like for you to speak to it. What would you say to a client? Because like we said, sometimes you get a pushback from clients when you try to get certain personal information from them up front. Of course, there are background due diligence you could do without them being aware of it, but there are some mandatory things that they have to be a part of. So what would you say to clients to make them feel more comfortable in providing this information, knowing that their information is safeguarded and that it's for a right purpose?
Okay. So what would you say to a client?
Yeah, just sometimes in real estate, when we are providing our KYC forms, or we say to them, hey, I need a copy of your ID, sometimes you just get an email back, why do you need all of this information from me? Just to make them feel at ease that, hey, it's not as if we're trying to pry into your personal life or anything bad, but it's just a part of the process.
Mike, this visit, you want to go?
To begin, I believe that you are mandated by law to do that. I mean, for you, it probably would be an easier process if you just ask them for one ID and they make a payment and, everything is done. But the reality of it is we are governed by the legislation, and I don't know if there's some way that we can try to get clients to understand that. Then I believe that would probably help.
And the reason why my disposition kind of twitched, because that's actually a red flag.
It is.
It's a red flag if you're doing business with someone and they are refusing, or all of a sudden just very hesitant or secretive, of this. Then you should probably not want to do business with them. You should. What if I come here and every time I'm interacting with you, I never want you to see me? Wouldn't you seem sort of skeptical? And that's also a good trigger to file a SARS, a Suspicious Activity Report. We always say any information is a lot of information, because now if you file that, the description of that activity or whatever on that client or that transaction, then the commission and the FIA would have a trace of this information. It may not be a lot of information to you, but suppose, unbeknown to you, maybe 5 other people from 3 different jurisdictions would have called our same commission or FIA with the same information, it would have been so helpful. And so
Yes.
that's why it's important to understand and know what suspicious activity is, what is acceptable and what's not acceptable. Learn your business lingo.
Yeah, that is very important, like you say, to know what's acceptable and what is not. And you can be actually helping someone else out
Exactly.
by doing your due diligence and what you need to do.
And then by what if you do move forward? Oh man, I really want to help them. Then you just don't know what you can be onboarding. You don't know what you can be enabling. You just don't know.
You want to stay alert. You might think, oh, I'm just being overly suspicious, but no, don't. You're not being suspicious. You're being smart. So yeah.
Yeah, I think that's very good advice. Well, again, I thank both of you for being a part of Let's Talk TCI Real Estate. You had a good crowd on sending information on here. I wouldn't read one of the comments to you, Miss Gardner. That's an off-air comment, but it was really good. Your husband was saying, "Go girl, you're doing right well." But I think on a more serious note, I think the information is very pertinent to right now, and especially in this day and time, and especially with, like I said, everything that's going on in the real estate sector. We don't want people to come in thinking, hey, it's just a relaxed career choice and it's not work you got to put into it. Yeah, you have to know these important parts of it because you have to know how to protect yourself and your business. And as real estate agents, even though we are under the umbrella of a company, we are also self-employed individuals. And also the ordinance does allow persons who are not under the umbrella, say like the Turks and Caicos Real Estate Association, to sell real estate. So for those persons who are out there selling real estate without a governing body or without a body to help and guide them with the process of client due diligence or anything like that, these are things that they have to be more conscious of. It's not just making a sale, but making sure that everything comes with the package. And I always say this to individuals, even for those who are trying to sell their properties on their own, they don't realize what risks they are taking.
Exactly.
By doing it, you think you're saving yourselves money versus not paying an agent commission or anything like that. But you have to make sure that you are also complying with all of these rules and regulations and to know who you are doing business with. And they don't think about that. So it's a lot of things that comes with the package. And one thing again that I say is so good about being a part of real estate association whenever something is passed down, or guidelines, or there are training sessions or anything within the group, the agents as a whole get access to it. But when you're not a part of a bigger body that's trying to make sure put everything in place to protect you, sometimes you may be losing out and you may be in a bad position if you do sell something to someone and they are not the best buyers or persons that you should be doing business with.
Yes.
Exactly.
So without any further delay, again, thank you for coming on the program. Thank you to our listening audience for being with us and for all of the comments that you have shared. Please continue to share this broadcast. I think this was a really great conversation. You've heard it not just from me, you've heard it from the professionals. And sometimes we know the answer, but hearing it from the professionals is even better because now you could say, hey, they know the law better than we do, and now let's work together to make sure it is done. With that said, I will say to everyone, stay safe and be blessed. See you next time on Let's Talk TCI Real Estate.